Welcome to the Up Podcast, raw real talk on everything young parenting.
From self-care, co-parenting, and family planning, to balancing school, work, relationships, and goals.
Together, we're challenging society's assumptions and building a safe and supportive community for young parents.
One honest conversation at a time. So join us on the journey.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Up Podcast. Today, we have one of our most recent partners who we are super excited to introduce to you guys. We are meeting with the New Mexico Commission of the Status of Women. So without further ado, I'm Divine.
And I'm Brandy. And yes, like Divine said, we have a super special guest. I know I always say that, but really, we really love all of the work that we've been trying to cultivate with Hannah and her team. And so we're really excited to have her on today. We're going to be talking about everything childcare, from finding childcare, affording childcare, becoming a childcare provider, and really starting to understand what is happening in New Mexico specifically around childcare and what resources are available. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Hannah. If you can just introduce yourself and kind of tell the listeners a little bit about what New Mexico Commission on the Status of Women does, what work your organization does, and what you all are doing this year. What's your theme?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. First of all, I'm just very excited to be on the Yup podcast with you all, and we really appreciate this. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to be able to share what the commission does and just also get some more information out on childcare. So I'm Hannah Crow. I'm the program manager for the New Mexico State Commission on the Status of Women. We're a state commission established in statute in 1975, and we primarily work in the areas of health, safety, and economic security for women and girls. So that kind of encompasses a lot. We do this primarily in three areas. We're very heavily involved within the legislative session, and so we'll kind of go and give support and public comment for policies that positively impact women and girls. We'll also collaborate with different organizations around the state. They kind of have more of a sense on their community and their community's needs. And so we'll go in as a state organization, collaborate with them, and kind of share some state resources that community might find helpful. And then the last way that we do this is through education. So we'll do workshops, speaking engagements, lunch and learn events, things like that, not only to get the word about what is going on in our state that's impacting women, but also just to kind of share more about what the commission is doing about it. And so this upcoming year, we're going to be focused on financial security. And we're really excited. We have a ton of different events lined up for this upcoming year.
That is so amazing. I mean, the work that you do is so amazing and super inspiring for others in New Mexico and, nationally at a large what, they can get out of the work that you're doing. So thank you for doing what you're doing. That's so awesome. You mentioned your goal for this year was like financial stability and things like that. I know New Mexico is nationally recognized for their expansion on free childcare. Can you kind of talk about how that system works, how it was possible, and how that kind of ties in with financial stability?
Yeah. So New Mexico became the first state in the nation to offer free universal childcare. We actually made history in November of 2025 when Senate Bill 241 was signed by Governor Lujan Grisham. And she has done a lot of work getting this universal childcare up and running and passed. And the program is primarily funded by New Mexico Early Childhood and Care Trust Fund. And this is fed through oil reserves and gas from the state of New Mexico. And so this universal childcare basically grants any childcare to a parent that's either enrolled in school or enrolled in work, regardless of income or immigration status. And so how it works is participants can apply through the Early Childhood Education and Care Department, which is a state organization. They work statewide just like us. So you'll go online, apply through them. You'll select either a provider or facility that they want to use the assistance for. And the state from there will directly pay that facility or provider mentioned. So this is super awesome because families can choose what works best for them, whether it's a home health care provider, whether it's an after school provider, a daycare facility, or even a family member can get registered and approved as a child care provider and get paid to take care of that child. So it's kind of universal, not one size fits all. We recognize that different families have different childcare needs. And we're also seeing that this universal childcare is saving an average of $12,000 per year per child for families. So this is putting a lot of money back into families' pockets.
Wow. I I'm amazed. I know we've talked about this before, but I actually am amazed to actually hear kind of the nitty gritty of it and how seamless it sounds and it feels for families to be able to navigate. A lot of the work that we do is for with young parents, right? And so being a young parent, Divine and I being young parents ourselves, it was really challenging for me to navigate childcare because on one hand, I knew what I could afford, and on the other hand, I knew what I wanted for my child. And that was a really tough balance because are the programs going to cover it? How are you going to come up with this money? How are people going to look when they're like, oh, you have her in this fancy facility, but you are struggling to like put food on the table, things like that. And so I feel like the work that you all are doing, and granted, I live in a state that has recently adopted universal childcare, but that doesn't mean that it's free. It just means that every child's entitled to childcare. And so it makes it really challenging for folks to navigate that system when they're wanting to go back to work because it all goes into one. Like you all are talking about financial stability. Well, when we look at young parents or at parents in general in society and we're like, why aren't you doing more? Well, you wouldn't have to get this assistance if you would just work, go back to school, get the degree. Okay, well, how do I do that when I don't have anyone to watch my child? So I think that, again, the work that you all are doing to really push this forward and to push the legislation forward to protect children and families statewide, no matter what their kind of family makeup looks like, is incredible and unprecedented. And I wish more states, especially mine, adopted something like that. So yeah, so like I was saying, I mean, childcare it often looks like a parenting issue, right? We typically look at parents and say, well, don't you have a grandparent who stays home? But when you're a young parent, the grandparent might be in their 40s. When my daughter was born, my mom was 36. So she's still nowhere near retiring, right? And so what do you mean have somebody just stay home? Or, well, why don't you just have them in this facility or that facility? And there's a certain life and a certain education that I want for my child. And so that is a really tough thing, but it tends to fall on the shoulders of parents to figure it out. But from your perspective, you look at it as an economic issue versus a parent issue. And I love that so much. And so I really want to understand more. Why do you feel that childcare has become such a major focus in your work this year, as your focus being financial stability? And when it comes to economic stability for women specifically, because in some cases there's a two-parent household, so how does this look like stability for women and for children and for girls? And what have you seen happening in families in the community since November of 2025?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And as the commission, we very much view it as affordable childcare is directly tied to women's economic security. We believe it's a parenting issue, but also a women's issue as well, because we know that when there is lack of access to affordable childcare, and oftentimes maybe one parent has to stay home with the kids, it's often assumed that the woman would stay home and kind of care for their child. Especially, we know that women often kind of shoulder the larger share of caregiving responsibilities and domestic work um, within the household. And so we know that when there is affordable childcare, these women can start to have economic security and independence and livelihoods. For example, maybe someone who's struggling with affordable childcare has to make some difficult decisions when it comes to affording basic care, basic necessities, and childcare, kind of like what you were saying. And so we want people to be able to maintain employment, enter the workforce, pursue their educational and career goals, regardless of the childcare restrictions that they might have. And so we know that with the commission's focus on economic security and New Mexico passing free childcare, it just seems like perfect, written in the stars, to kind of collaborate on this and kind of share more of this information as well, because it's providing those opportunities for women that wouldn't normally get it otherwise. On top of that, New Mexico, we have free childcare, we have free college. We can get a 2-year or a 4-year degree for free using the lottery or opportunity scholarship through our state. So our state does a really good job of making these resources available for our residents, but it doesn't always make these resources known. And so we kind of see our job as a state commission to amplify this resource, let people know that this is not only an opportunity, but a career opportunity. If you want to get trained and become a provider, there's great economic pathways towards security in that. And yeah, so all around, we just really try and support this, uplift this resource, and let people know that there's not one way that childcare can look for a family. In terms of what we've kind of seen from November of 2025, it's still a little early to tell, just because we are still getting that resource out there. A lot of residents in New Mexico kind of know that this is a thing, but they didn't know that it went into effect already or anything like that. But that being said, we have talked to a lot of families, and specifically single mothers, who have been able to access this resource successfully, and it's made a huge difference in terms of their employment and educational pathways.
Wow. That's so cool. Like, I wish I could relate. Like Brandy mentioned, coming out of a state of Pennsylvania, we had resources, but it was never free. Even in high school, still being obliged to pay, childcare prices with a different percentage. It was helpful, but there's always more help that can be given. So the work that you're doing, and I'm sure we're going to keep repeating it, but it's just so amazing to like witness in real time. Like, it's not a goal. Like, you guys actually like implemented it and took off the ground running with it. So I'm just amazed. And I look forward to like hearing more about, the results and data that this resource does for people. And so, kind of before November, that, this has been a thing, what were some of the barriers that young parents and mothers were, facing when trying to find affordable and reliable childcare?
That is such a big question. And we actually have seen a lot of young families, struggle to afford childcare. It can be so, so expensive, finding quality providers in their area, maintaining long wait lists, trying to get their kids in. And then also just finding, like, especially for young parents who might just be entering in the workforce or still in school, finding a childcare schedule that works for them. Because if you have classes on the weekend, but you can only get childcare during the week, that doesn't really help you too much. And so we've definitely seen a lot of that be resolved within the universal free childcare, especially, it's a lot more affordable. Something specifically that we deal with in New Mexico is because we have such rural communities, transportation can be a big one. And that's part of our work as a state organization, trying to get more information out there that, you can become a provider, you can work directly from your home, all of those things, especially in areas that might not have a ton of providers. Now that we have this new free childcare, there's going to be a lot more demand. So we're really hoping that some more providers in rural areas start to train and become registered. But yeah, we've seen a lot of these issues unfold before November. And then something that I'll mention as well is, especially for young parents, they probably don't really know how to apply for a service like this, particularly because it's new and maybe it's their first kid. So we kind of point people towards the early childhood education and care department, which is the ECD that I've been mentioning. But it's a statewide organization. You can go on their website, and they have some really great resources, resources on kind of how to access assistance, resources on how to find providers and facilities in the area. And then you can also call them. They have a number that you can call just for questions and kind of walk through the application process and things like that. So they provide a lot of information for young parents and those that are kind of looking to branch out into this new resource that we're offering.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned resource for the resource, because one thing I say a lot is we really like to have warm handoffs for things, especially we're a web-based program, and we recognize that going to a website and figuring out where to click first can be really intimidating, and you don't really know, what do I do? Okay, is this a safe site where I put my actual, information in, where I live, and, personal things about me, things like that. And how do I know that I answered it correctly? And what happens if I didn't answer it correctly? Can I get someone on the phone? There's so many hoops and barriers to jump through. So I'm so glad that you address that as one of the barriers too, of just not really even knowing where to begin. And when you do find out where to begin, maybe not even knowing what to do from there. So I'm glad that you all have that. One thing so I have a background in social work and also in therapy, as well as the work that I do with YEP. And one thing that I recognize is that parenting is so layered, right? And so there's something that we like to say in the social work field that's called toxic stress. And sometimes toxic stress creates opportunities for people to make poor decisions in their parenting, whatever it is. I won't go into detail about that. But we like to look at toxic stress because it comes from something. It typically comes from financial instability or housing insecurity, or barriers with transportation, or single parenting, or conflicts in a relationship, conflicted co-parenting. It can come from anything. It can come from a child having, a certain diagnosis that's challenging, or a parent having a diagnosis that's challenging to kind of navigate through. And so when I think about childcare, I think about how that could fall under the bucket of something that causes this toxic stress, because when you're trying to figure it all out, and you're trying to figure out how to afford it, and you're trying to figure out how to make it happen, and like you said, does this facility go until 6 p.m.? Because I get off at 5 and I fight traffic across. I don't know how much traffic there is in New Mexico, but where I live, there is traffic going 1 mile up the road. So is there traffic, or do they open at 6 a.m. because I have to go to work at 7 a.m. or whatever it looks like, right? And so that can cause a lot of stress, and it can cause parents to not be their best selves. It can cause parents to not parent in the way that they want to parent, because they're so focused on, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to make this happen? And sometimes it feels like after you've paid childcare and everything else, you're really working just to pay the childcare.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So then if I weren't working, then that would be one bill off, and I maybe could afford life, right? And so it's just such a challenging balance. And I also love that you mentioned the idea of sometimes, a lot of times, this falling on women, right? On mothers, folks who identify as mothers. And I think that that's something that we don't want to talk about, because it can be a really touchy subject. But there's also something in parenting that's called like the default parent. You could be in a 2-parent household and still feel like the default parent, and that's really challenging. When the child is sick, who has to stay home, who has to miss a day of work, who has to miss a day of school. And so recognizing that, and also maybe there's some things we can do about that in the future. But because that's where we stand now, I appreciate you all for framing it as a women and girls issue, and actually saying it out loud, because sometimes it's hard to say that out loud without, feeling like you're neglecting a whole nother parent who has their own stress and their own, things that are going on as well. But for childcare specifically, this is something that we see. So I appreciate you for bringing that up. And I would like, this is a little bit off script, and because I like to do that. And I really want to understand, if somebody wanted to do this in their state, right? If somebody wanted to push for legislation and somebody wanted to identify the barriers and identify the needs and also identify areas of growth in their own state, how did you all start? Where did you all begin? Where did you get the information from? What was the thing that was like, this is our next
Yeah.
push?
Well, I'll say a couple things to that. New Mexico, we are a pretty large state, but we have a pretty small population. And so I think that's what definitely made us unique when being able to offer something like free childcare for the whole state. We do kind of just have a smaller population, I believe around 2 million people. And then from there, or probably more than that, but around there. And because of our small population, we really do try and kind of bridge these gaps between rural areas, those transportation issues that we were mentioning. And so Michelle Lujan Grisham, which is our governor, she really kind of took the lead and made this kind of her passion project, and was really instrumental in getting this passed, and getting it funded as well. Funding is a big one because childcare isn't cheap. And so yeah, I would say what definitely helped made it possible is because we're such a small state, we can kind of swing it. On top of that, I would really say that just getting women in government and policy is so important. Getting women's voices, hearing women's stories and experiences, and kind of targeting a lot of these women specific issues. New Mexico, we're very lucky. Our House of Representatives is majority female. Our Senate is equal male and female. We have a female Secretary of State, and then of course, we have a female governor. And I really think that that helped us push forward, kind of become more instrumental in passing something like this, and recognizing that affordable childcare is essential, right? You really need it as a parent or a family member to be able to continue education, to be able to, maintain your employment or even grow in career opportunities. And so that's something we've been really fortunate about. As a commission, we truly believe that the affordable childcare falls onto the state or federal government level. We don't think it's really for organizations to have to fight for this. This is a resource that really our government should be providing. But that being said, we recommend organizations who are super passionate about this or even individuals to form a coalition. This has been super helpful when the talk of universal childcare kind of got started and before it got passed, and definitely including organizations that serve members that are primarily impacted by this issue kind of held a lot of powerful weight and meaningful experience when talking more about why our state needed this, why our communities needed this, and how this was going to help the issues that we were seeing, like not being able to maintain employment and also childcare, like being able not to obtain economic security. And so we really believe that forming coalitions in collaboration with state and federal government is really a good pathway to try and get this passed in other states and recognize that this is an essential resource that's very needed.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm hoping that as this implementation of the expansion of childcare continues and more people learn about it, I hope more states and orgs learn about it, because you briefly mentioned some of the ripple effects that it has on parents as a whole who receive this resource, as far as like keeping employment, going back to school, and things like that. And so would you say are some other ripple effects that the communities can gain from a resource like this, specifically the young parents who are still in school trying to work and have all of these caps over them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important point. I think not only short term, being able to afford those basic necessities, being able to stay within their educational or career path, but how it kind of accumulates and compounds over time. We think about a family's savings and how much, $12,000 per child per year would really go in family savings. Building Social Security, right? The longer more people people can work and stay employed, the greater benefit they'll have with Social Security and being able to retire. And then also just being able to, achieve financial stability in terms of, can you continue with the education or career that you have with your schedule and not have it be interrupted by, maybe you can't afford it that month, or something happened and you need to fix the car. And so then you have to choose between fixing your car and putting your child in daycare for that month. So I think honestly, just the ripples we'll see as over time, families can start to build more stability and kind of get more comfortable with that resource, that they know that it'll be there and that it won't be taken away or missed for some sort of external reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Which again, late is another barrier, right? Not knowing if this is going to be here from week to week. Also, there are a lot of programs. I know in the state that I live in, there are a lot of programs and resources, but you have to jump through so many hoops to keep it. Like you've got a sign-in sheet every day, or you've got to report this many hours, or you've got to this, you've got to that. And that becomes also a full-time job when you're working full-time, or you're working part-time, you're going to school full-time, and you got to make sure the hours, and then God forbid your kid is sick, but then they have to meet the hours to keep the funding. And it's just a cycle of barriers. So I think that's important to highlight what this childcare looks like for you all in New Mexico. And so you've mentioned this a lot. You've talked a lot about the opportunity for people, for women, for parents, and in our case, for young parents to become childcare providers. And you've mentioned it a lot, and it feels like we've glassed over it, but we haven't. I want to lean into that as a possibility, because we hear about that as a possibility when a child has a disability or an illness, or they're, funded through the state for something and they need a caregiver. But we haven't really ever heard of this or I haven't really, when it comes to just, parents in general becoming childcare providers and being able to make that a feasible income for them. So what would you say to that young person, that young parent who's like, you know what, maybe I've always babysat my siblings, and I've always, had this thought that I want to go into early childhood development. And so this might be something that I'm into. What would you say to them? And then also, what does it look like to become a child care provider from your standpoint? You may not know all of the training and all the logistics, but for somebody who's maybe brand new and is like, that, there's no way I can do that, what would you say to that person?
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you asked this question, and yeah, this has been a lot of our work trying to get this information out of there. We definitely encourage people to think about becoming a provider in childcare for a ton of different reasons. One, it's a really meaningful career path, like you said. If you grew up as an older sibling, or you just love taking care of children and families, this could be a great career path for you. And then on top of that, I don't think people realize how much economic security and stability can come from a position like this. So currently in New Mexico, we have free education. Like I mentioned, you can get a 2-year or 4-year degree for free. But actually, a lot of universities and colleges in New Mexico and around the country are starting to develop these early childhood educator programs to start to talk about, the different milestones and the different kind of levels of child adolescence, and also just kind of utilize different training techniques and things like that, gain some more experience and some more insight within childcare. This is, I would say, a great way for someone to dip their toe to see if they're interested and it's something that they enjoy doing. On top of that, New Mexico also has a wage ladder for childhood educators. And so this is basically just a pay scale that raises educators' salaries based on things like experience, education, different requirements that they meet, things like that. And so not only does this help reduce turnover, but it also helps kind of build this credibility towards this early child educator role. Um, and then I would say also too, like, let's say you're in a very rural area and you don't have access to transportation, you can become a childcare provider and work from your own home. Especially if someone is a parent, or maybe they're a single parent and they have a young one and they don't know what to do with them. They can actually take care of their own child while they're doing caregiving, and being that educator role. And then on top of that as well, they can choose how many kids they oversee as well. So you can really choose kind of your level of comfortability and expertise. But yeah, I would say overall, there are a lot of great ways that people can kind of dip their toe in and see if they're interested and kind of pursue that pathway. In terms of New Mexico, I'm not sure what it's like for other states. And ECCD, their website will probably have a lot more information as well. But I do believe you have to be first aid certified, so be able to, perform the Heimlich maneuver, being able to perform CPR, just in case of emergencies. They have to pass a background check as well. And then I think there is one more requirement. I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but they have a pretty fairly easy and simple process in going through and becoming a childcare provider. So we really recommend it to anyone who is interested. And yeah, they can learn a lot more on just the trainings that they can attend, or the requirements they should have, or even just like other educative programs like colleges and universities that provide that training service. So yeah, we would recommend them to go to ECCD's website, but becoming a childcare provider can be very meaningful and very rewarding.
Yeah, I think that's such an amazing opportunity, really, for young parents nationally, internationally, because a lot of the young parents in our community are almost put in positions where they have to become stay-at-home moms because of things like childcare costs and single income. It's just not even being worth it. Like Brandy mentioned, you're paying for the working for the childcare. So to have that opportunity of you're already watching your baby, you're getting paid for it, and you can continue that at your free of choice. So I think that's so cool, especially a lot of our young parents are always seeking parenting education, how to care for their baby, baby led food weaning and different things like that, milestones, and they will be learning those things as they are preparing to take care of other children in their care. So I think that is just amazing. And so my question is, I know you guys have a lot of work on your hands already with the goal that you have, but if we can just snap our fingers and have everything that we hope for, I'm wondering from your perspective, what are some policies changes that you're hoping to see or would love to see in the next couple of years? And what would that look like? What are your hopes for the next couple of years in policy change for young parents?
Yeah. And, this is such an important question. I'm super glad that you asked about this because like I said before, we're very involved in legislative session. We try and always keep our eyes and ears open for different policies and bills that are coming forward that are going to impact women or children in New Mexico. So, one of the bills that we're going to be following this upcoming legislative session is paid family medical leave. This would allow young parents, old parents, new parents, all different kinds of parents leave for either a new child or a loved one as well. And they can do this without risking financial insecurity. This also provides military leave if someone needs to do any military service. And this also provides safety leave if someone is dealing with intimate partner violence. This bill has been presented in the past legislative sessions, the past 6 years. So it's been, hasn't been passed yet, but it's been working towards it. But we do expect this to come at this next upcoming legislative session in New Mexico, and we will be supporting it as a commission. Another policy that we think is really important is baby bonds. So currently, equal pay laws have been in effect for decades in New Mexico. But as a commission, we really haven't seen any big changes in terms of women and families' economic security and mobility. And so we're now kind of looking to other ways and other policies that we can start to build that. And so baby bonds is one way to do that. It would be a small investment once the baby is born, and then it accrues over time once they reach a certain age. I believe it would be about 17 or 18 years old. They can utilize this fund to put a down payment on a house, to access college tuition, or a number of other things that would help them build financial stability and economic security. This bill is going to be brought this upcoming legislative session by Treasurer Laura Montoya. And we're really excited to hopefully see this pass and see what difference this would make in terms of families and women's economic security. And then the last policy change that we would love to see in the next 5 years that we're hoping to support this upcoming legislative session is just more work done for affordable housing. We know for young parents, it can be really hard to get the credit that you need to get a mortgage. It can be really hard with the rising housing increases to be able to buy a house right now. And so we're really hoping that affordable childcare is another avenue or pathway that families and women can start to build that financial security. And if you're interested on any of these topics, all of these topics will be kind of presented and talked about more in our upcoming Women's Summit. So we have an annual conference that we do every year. This year, it's going to be on September 26th at the Isleta Resort and Casino, and it's going to be focused from policy to practice, Women's Economic Security and Advancement Summit. So we hope to see more people there and get some more information on some of the legislative policies that we'll see this upcoming year.
I just want to thank you for being so thorough and so candid about what you all are looking forward to for this year. One thing that I was going to ask, but I feel like you answered, was really, we've been talking about financial stability in terms of childcare and working loosely, right? But as it relates to childcare. And so I was really going to ask what other kind of topics fell under financial security that fell in your purview for the year. But I thank you for being, thorough and looking at housing and transportation you've spoken about and family leave and things like that. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate, again, the work that you all are doing. So I would love for our listeners to really know how to get in touch, stay in touch, learn more about what you all are doing, learn how to get involved, especially in New Mexico. We are expanding. And we'll talk about that another time, not today, but we are at YUP expanding. And so it's really important that we're having this conversation about resources in New Mexico. But it's also really important because as a YUP community, we've been really focusing this year on early childhood development. And so what falls into that is being able to do what's best for the development of children. So I appreciate you for kind of hitting on those topics and helping us help to advance YUP more for our listeners in the future. But for now, how can people connect with you? How can they get involved? How can they get more information?
Well, I wanted to say thank you so much. We're proud to kind of collaborate with YUP. You guys are a great organization and provide some great resources for young parents around the nation. And so we're glad to kind of just give a little bit into what New Mexico is doing and what we're doing as a commission. You can follow us online at the New Mexico NMCSW.org. That is our website where you can learn more about what we're doing, upcoming events that's happening, and our different meetings that we have with our commissioners. We're also on Instagram and Facebook at New Mexico CSW. So we're always posting flyers on there as well, and we uplift a lot of organizations that we work with and collaborate on there as well. And then we're also having an upcoming series with the New Mexico Early Childhood Education Department where we're taking this kind of Lunch and Learn series on how to access New Mexico's free childcare service and also how to become a provider with application guidance around the state. So look out for that. We're going to be in Albuquerque in August. We're going to be in Santa Rosa in October. We're going to be in Hobbs in December. So we're really excited to get the word out more statewide. But of course, go follow ECECD as well. Their handle, I believe, is New Mexico or NMECECD. And then their website also has some really great information as well, not just for New Mexico residents, but for everyone to kind of learn more about training on early educators, different programming that they're doing, and just different facilities that are available in our area. So
Yes, thank you so much. And we will link all of the contact information to stay in touch with you. This is not the last time you will be seeing or hearing from Hannah, hopefully. We would love to have you back to continue the conversation, see, any updates on your new goals and as far as the childcare expansion goes as well. We're so happy that you were here. I think you've provided so much knowledgeable nuggets for our young parents, for financial stability, and also for, the nation as a whole, the legislation as a whole. I think you briefly mentioned like a lot of the changes happen from having that representation and more women in the rooms. So, being able to talk about this is, how change comes. And so, yeah, I'm happy to continue spreading the word of what you guys are doing within the Yup community. And we look forward to continue connecting.
well, thank you
Yes.
so much. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful to meet with you all today, and I'm glad we got to do this.
Yes,
Yes.
and if you all have any questions for Hannah, please send them our way. We will get them to her. This is a budding collaboration, again, with more super exciting things to come. And so, if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have anything, send them our way and we will get them to her. And yeah, until next time, y'all.
The Commission on the Status of Women educates the public, advocates for supportive policies, and collaborates with community partners to create a more equitable future for the women of New Mexico. To ensure that their work is responsive and reflects the intersecting needs and priorities of New Mexican women, the Commission commits to engaging, uplifting, and prioritizing the voices and leadership of the women around the state to ensure their equitable access to health, safety, and the ability to thrive. To learn more about the Commission, check out their website and social media platforms.
If you enjoyed the Up podcast, please subscribe, share, and leave a comment.
And visit youngunitedparents.org for the information, community, and resources young moms and dads need to thrive.